Good afternoon, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Ogden, as we gather to celebrate the life of our dear friend, Janet Helen Atlee Shipton. In the Unitarian Universalist tradition, we light a chalice at the beginning of our service. The chalice represents the fire within each of us, the burning flame of love, justice, compassion, and the joy of life. Today we light this flame for Janet. We light this chalice in honor of life's sacred dance of living and dying. May its flame remind us of those who have passed to us passion and inspiration. May it remind us that we too are participants in the dance. We light our chalice today to honor the life and living of a truly intrepid, fiercely loving citizen, Lady Janet Shipton.
We've gathered here together in beloved community to celebrate Janet's life. When someone we have cared for dies, especially after a long and fulfilling life, family and friends gather together to remember their life. At times when we must face death and separation, we need one another's support and company for understanding. Just to be together takes away some of the loneliness and draws our hearts together. Many of our tears are tears of love. At such times, the various faiths that sustain us separately come together and serve to unite us with the bridge. We've come together to give thanks that we knew this extraordinary woman, to express our gratitude for the days and years we were able to laugh and cry with her. We are here to remember and memorialize Janet's passion for living and honor the truly noble, good woman that she was. Each of us is at a different stage on our life's journey as we look at the mysteries of life and death. But today we share something in common. We have been touched by Janet's life. Poet Richard Gilbert was moved to write of a time like this. Quote, "We pause in the silent mystery of life and death, time and space. In the holy quiet of this hour, we reflect on the death of a woman of many years. Her life cycle has been completed, and for this we are grateful. May we be assured that this is not a time so much of sadness, but of thanksgiving. Though the sadness of being separated from Janet is with us, we are deeply grateful for our time together. In time, our gratitude will overshadow the sadness, and we will rejoice fully in her memory. May a sense of joy come over us as we remember her in the full vigor of her life. And so we gather as Janet's family and friends, each with our own memories, each with our own feelings. It is said that grief shared is divided, just as joy shared is multiplied. Yet by its very nature, grief is a private journey. Since each of you has your own relationship with Janet, no one can fully understand your loss. As the psalmist said long ago, we walk through the valley of the shadow of death. We are meant to walk through the valley, not to pitch a tent there. We are accompanied on the path by the love of others and the strong assurance that the spirit of love and light and comfort and hope is present in every hug and every smile. May the sweetness of our memories come alive this afternoon as we gather to honor and celebrate the life of Janet Shipton. Let us now begin our journey of remembrance.
When Tom Brokaw wrote The Greatest Generation, he described the lives of the men and women who came out of the Depression, who won great victories and made lasting sacrifices in World War II, and then returned home to begin building the world we live in today. One of those extraordinary women was Janet Shipton, whose life we are celebrating here this morning. If we are to heed the past to prepare for the future, we should pay attention to the lives of a generation that speaks to us of duty and honor, sacrifice and accomplishment. Here was one such life. Just 12 days before her 96th birthday, Janet Shipton died peacefully on February 13, 2019, at the Peachtree Assisted Living Center in West Haven, Utah. She was born on February 25, 1923, in Hampstead, England. She was the first of 4 children born to Clement Richard Atlee and Violet Helen Atlee. Janet liked to think of herself as her husband's wife and not so much her father's daughter. She loved her father and cherished the time she spent walking with him and talking politics, something they did often. Her father was Great Britain's Prime Minister from 1945 to 1951. Janet was a young woman when her dad took office, and though she never resided at number 10 Downing Street, she visited there often. Janet was educated in Stanmore, London, before being evacuated to Tintagel, Cornwall during the Second World War. Later in the war, she served as a member of the Women's Auxiliary Air Force. After the war, Janet worked as a psychologist in Bristol. There, she met electrical engineer Harold Shipton, who was working at the nearby Burton Neurological Institute. Janet and Harold married on the 20th of November 1947 in a wedding considered the society event of the year, with a reception at Chequers and most of the post-war Labor cabinet in attendance. Janet and Harold immigrated to the United States in 1958, where Harold, whom she lovingly referred to as Shippy, had been offered a research associate position at the University of Iowa. While living in Iowa City, Janet raised her 2 daughters and became increasingly involved in community politics, playing a key role in the organization of the Hoover Health Council and serving as Johnson County Supervisor in 1978. Janet also served in leadership roles in the Iowa and Missouri League of Women Voters, the Missouri Women's Network, and the Missouri Older Women's League, focusing on issues of women's health and voter registration. Janet and Shippy later moved to St. Louis, where he taught at Washington University for 20 years. They moved to Florida when Shippy was stricken with Parkinson's disease. In 2006, they moved to Ogden, Utah, to be close to their granddaughter, Melissa. Shippy died here in Ogden on April 9th, 2007. He was 86 years old. On June 4th, 2006, shortly after moving to Ogden, Janet joined the Unitarian Universalist Church of Ogden, UUCO, and then the Ogden League of Women's Voters. At UUCO, she started the practice of circle dinners and hosting traveling UUs, and she advocated strongly for and helped fund our solar panels and our endowment fund. One of Janet's biggest regrets was that she outlived her children. Both of Janet's daughters died tragically years ago. Janet once said, "We shouldn't outlive our children." It was a great sadness in her life. Even though Janet had significant losses in her life, she never stopped being curious, funny, cheerful, and caring. Although she is gone, Janet will live on in our hearts. Three of Janet's grandchildren will now share their stories.
I'm Helen, Melissa. Sorry, harder than I thought. I was named after Janet, who was named after her mother. My mother was named after her. I didn't carry on the tradition. She was a formidable woman. She might have thought of her as Shippy's little quiet wife, but that was far from the truth. She was a powerful advocate, an activist her whole life, and much of my younger years, in fact, up until age 14, most everything that happened that was important, she was there. I remember a trip that we took when I lived in England, and we went, I think it was maybe 3rd or 4th grade, I don't remember exactly. But she was the chaperone for a trip to London, and she had all the best stories. Everybody wanted to be in my group, and I was not the kid everybody wanted to hang with. But that day, I had the most fabulous chaperone. She had all the cool stories from the Tower of London. She knew all the cool stories about the crown jewels. And the best of all, at the end of the day, she bought ice cream for our group. And the kids talked to me more at that whole year than ever in my lifetime because, hey, I had that cool grandma who bought ice cream. Another thing that I remember we went to, I went to a whole lot of political events. And to Janet's chagrin, I became Republican. I don't think she ever quite got over that. But I met, before they were really super famous, the Judds. And they played their first hit single, I think it's called Grandfather, at that meeting. I bet they don't even remember, but I do. I remember meeting Winona and just being like, oh, this woman's going to make it big. And everybody knows Winona Judd, she really did make it a huge impact. And I probably met a lot of famous people that became famous, and I didn't remember them. But she always drug me to all these little events, and I was like, okay, they're really boring. But then, as I got older, I started to really understand why she did what she did and the reasons for doing it, and I became passionate, although on the other side, sorry Janet, for causes, and I realized that was what she was trying to impart, was to pick up a cause and fight for it and defend it. And she passionately was an advocate for women and for their rights. And I think she would, if she would have known, and I don't know how much she knew toward the end, she would have been rejoicing, and probably did rejoice, for all the women that are sitting in the House of Representatives and our Congress for getting to where they are. They owe that right to Janet. And I hope that someday I'll be able to be that kind of advocate for women, to always stand up for what you believe in and never let anybody tell you you can't, because you can, and she did.
So, I am Douglas Landell, and I'm also Janet's grandson. One of the things I remember most is with my father and Grandma, we kind of would meet in the middle of Hannibal, Missouri. So we'd actually drive down from Iowa City with Dad, and then we'd switch over and ride the rest of the way with Grandma after we'd stop at the Country Kitchen, and that was the trading place. And then we'd end up going to the zoo, and we'd have a full week of just fun. And my grandmother was one of the most athletic people you would ever meet. She could outrun us, and she could definitely beat us in bowling any day of the week. She was a very, very, very good bowler, and she put any one of us to shame every time. So that's just one of the things I remember is going bowling with her. I appreciated the opportunity to purchase her house several years ago, which I sold last year. But she did help me with some opportunities, and I do thank her every day for that. And thank you for the time here.
I'm Libby, Janet's granddaughter. I stayed with Janet when I was in high school, and I remember her always attending every drama play I was in, every choir concert in, every soccer game I was in. She was there. And she also made me do a lot of political work for the Democrats. And I think I stuffed like about 1 million envelopes and called like about the same number of people for various people in office that, well, I got a granddaughter you guys can borrow. And one thing I remember about my grandmother is if I ever needed to be put in my place, she had a wicked right hook and was willing to give it to me. I mean, I don't know how many times she knocked sense into me when I needed to have sense knocked into me, and she formed a large part of the person I am today, and a lot of my core beliefs I got from her.
The poet Muriel Geiser wrote that, quote, "The universe is made of stories, not atoms." Our stories of Janet are the atoms of her life now. In telling the stories of Janet's life, we hold her in the universe of our hearts. If you are so moved, I invite you to come forward and share a brief story that exemplifies who Janet was to you and the gifts she brought to your life. Please come up to the microphone one at a time as you feel moved to speak. If you would prefer, we can bring the microphone to you. Thank you for sharing your memories of Janet with us today. If you would, please keep your story short so that we all have a chance to speak.
I'm going to go first. So my name is Beth Dion. I'm the music director here at UUCO. I've been the music director for going on 14 years now. I clearly remember meeting Janet for the first time. She would often sit in the front row right here with Shippy, with his big, huge electric smile. I don't think I ever saw Shippy not smiling. And Janet was just the most loving, attentive partner, and I just was floored by her spirit and her energy and her love of life. And so in choosing the music today, we got a couple of suggestions. One was Amazing Grace, which we will be singing later, and that absolutely was one of Janet's favorites, I know for a fact. And then the beautiful piece you heard just now, played by David Windmill, was Debussy's Clair de Lune, which is arguably one of the most beautiful piano pieces ever written. And I know that Janet would have loved it. She enjoyed listening to the piano pieces that we would have here on Sunday mornings. And then our final song today is Blue Boat Home, which to me kind of epitomizes Janet. And she loved people, she loved this planet, she wanted to do good, she was the one behind getting our solar panels, so she had just, such passion for all things like that. And so our final hymn, Blue Boat Home, talks about that, and it's an old tune with new words, which I think just kind of wraps up Janet. She was always looking forward, and I think she would have approved of that. So just one quick story. I did get a chance to meet with Janet briefly about a week and a half ago. And she sang in my choir, by the way, and I loved having her with the choir when she was here. And I sang some songs with her, and she was kind of not really able to communicate at this point. This was just, about 2 weeks ago. But as soon as we started singing Spirit of Life, she perked up and she actually started singing along with that song. And so that was very meaningful to have that song today. And I'm going to miss that woman.
I want to tell a real funny story. So when Janet was about 90 years old, she went to DI and bought a helmet and a bicycle. And the woman who was checking her out said, "What are you going to do with this bicycle?" Janet probably got a little feisty and said, "I'm going to ride it." Well, I think she actually did that, and that was very short-lived, probably until the first crash. But Dan and I said, we want to be like Janet when we grow up.
Great grandmother is what she was to me, and she fulfilled that. She fulfilled that name. She was a great grandmother. Probably the greatest anyone will ever have. When I was little, I was adopted, and I didn't know what that word was to me, but she helped me understand that. She bought me a book. We went walking on the Ogden River, and she bought me ice cream. We went home and played board games and ate food, baked cookies, and talked about life. And as she grew older, I just adored her more and more because she's the strong woman we all know and love, and she will always live within us.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Althea Martinez, and I'm known as the neighbor in the back. Janet would be talking to me over the fence just about every day. She would be tending the garden. Before I knew it, she would walk around the block, bring me a fresh rose of whatever color it was, and ask me, just put this in the flower, in a vase and watch it grow. And her love of politics, family, was first and foremost to Janet. My fondest memory was when she told me, well, look at me. I'm living in my 96th year, but guess what? When I get to 100, we'll have a big tea party. She enjoyed tea, and she was just the best friend and neighbor a person could ever have. So me and my family will miss her. She golfed with my husband. Doug talked about what a great bowler she was, but golf was her game too. She enjoyed golfing. So we will miss her. We love her. We love the family. And thanks for sharing your grandmother with us. As an immigrant to this country myself from Belize, Central America, she was very cognizant of politics and everything that happened in Belize. And she always told me, one of these days when you go, we'll just have to go visit, But her spirit will live on forever. Thank you.
I'm Tom Priest, and as a member of this church, you could always count on Janet to step up and help get something done. And I remember probably 10 years ago or something, we were trying to get our Whole Lives program, which is human sexuality, and it's a program we have here in partnership with the United Church of Christ about living healthy lives, including what that means sexually. And here Janet's in her 80s, and we needed help, and she said, well, I'll sign up. And she went through the training, and I just thought, wow, someone in their 80s that was willing to take that on, that was quite a testament. I always appreciated her for that.
I'm Carol Nylander. I met her in about 2007, and as an ephemera old paper, historical paper dealer, many years before I met Janet, I found an article about her in a Life magazine, and I cut it out because I was so impressed with the kind of woman she was. And little did I know that I would meet her one day. She was so strong-minded, and that came across in that article in Life magazine in the 1940s. And I did get to meet her. I was just astonished that I met her all those years later. She introduced us to Lady Atlee, her sister-in-law, in London, and Lady Atlee showed us around London, my husband and I. And I'll always remember Janet for, my husband made a political statement once to her. And he was incorrect on this point and that point. I would gently tell him that, but oh my, did she set him straight. She said, this is wrong, that's wrong, and the other's wrong. And he said, yes, ma'am. I will always very fondly remember her. She's been a wonderful influence in my life.
Hi, my name is Holly Leak. I'm a member of the church. And we've been members for about 11 years, and it wasn't long after we joined that my husband and I learned that Janet's father was an English prime minister, and we got kind of fangirl, fanboy about it. And we were talking to her one day, and she said, well, come on over for lunch, and I'll tell you more about him. So we said, sure. And we went over to her house, and she made us this little lunch, and then she took us down into her basement and showed us this old PBS video biography of her father, and it was fascinating. And we were enjoying it very much, and we looked over, and Janet was sound asleep. And little side note, I've been a member of the book club here at church since we joined too, and Janet was always a book club member. And that woman can fall asleep on a dime. She'd be nodding off in the book club, and someone would say something, and she'd just be wide awake again. But here are two relative strangers sitting in this woman's basement. Very trusting, very loving. The film ended, and she sort of stirred awake and took us out back and showed us her garden and her hanging tomatoes, and we said our goodbyes. And I mean, she's almost the same age as my own grandmother, so I built a connection to her, and I'm going to miss her too.
I'm David Windmill, and I've been attending here for about 10 years, and I wanted to share with you our first experience with Janet. And we had just only been here maybe a month and really didn't know people very well. And we went out with a group to Roosters to have something to eat. And we sat right across from Janet. And here was this woman with this lovely British accent over a pint of stout beer. I mean, it was dark beer. And she started sharing things, and she didn't mince words. She would brook no nonsense. And she would tell us very intimate things. I won't go into detail, but very intimate things about her life. And we had barely met this woman. But over the years, and the time that I served on the board and was president of the board, I have to say that Janet was, if something needed to be done, she was right there. She was right there with the funding that we needed, and the last thing that I'll say is that in the years that I was introduced to Unitarian Universalism, she was formative in my development, and the awareness of the importance of justice and compassion. I'm going to miss you, Jen.
So one of my first memories of Janet was after I met her and I saw the video that Holly mentioned, and I just thought, this is the coolest thing. Oh my gosh, this amazing person is here. She's right here with us. And I was just so excited about that when I made the mistake of when I introduced her to someone, I told them that who her father was and that little bit of her history. She took me aside and immediately informed me that I should never do that again, that she wanted people to know her for who she was and not this part of her history. And that just showed me the humbleness that she had, that was part of Janet, and I'll always remember that.
I think this microphone is a little better if I came up here. I met Janet here at the Unitarian Church when she first became a member. And I didn't really know who she was, but we conversed about different things, and I learned that she was a member of the League of Women Voters, which I was also. And we just seemed to be going to be good friends. And so she invited me over to her place that was on Liberty Avenue, I believe, at the time. And I got to read about her father, who until that time I didn't know had been the Prime Minister of England. And so I was interested in politics. And so she lent me her book about her father, which was very large. Of course, he had done a great many things in England, and he was generally on the side of the poor people when I found out from reading the book, and so I admired him for that. And when Janet and I had become good friends, she suggested that we go down to southern Utah, because she had always wanted to see the beautiful rock formations that were down there that she had read about. And so we arranged to take a bus trip down to southern Utah, and we walked around all the usual tourist places, and really enjoyed that. And she offered to teach me how to play, what do you call it, chess. And I had never learned to play it, so I thought I'd try to learn. But I just never took to it. But she tried her best to teach me chess. And she talked about me in answer to questions that I had about England during the war. And she was always like that, but she never bragged about her parents or her family. That is in the usual way of starting a conversation. It was always in response to questions that I had about her, because she never pushed herself forward and for herself, but you can be sure that she had the welfare of poor people and disadvantaged people and people of other countries that had less to offer than England did. And so I think I just enjoyed her company so much. And I went to visit her at her little house on Liberty, and she would show me the things that I was asking about, her pictures from the family, and some of the things that her father did. And so I just felt like I had lost a really good friend when she first went to the hospital. And I made it, went to there to visit her several times. And then when she was at Peachtree this last time, I went out to see her, and my family went with her because they enjoyed her too. And we even got to share her birthday with her that she had out there. And so I just have nothing but good memories of Janet, and I'm sure that wherever she is, she'll be improving things.
I was asked to read Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you're with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
My dear old dad was a devout Catholic for all of his 94 years. My mother died 8 years before he did, and he missed her every single day. Dad said, I don't know what happens when we die, but this much I do know. Love lives on. The love we've shared with Janet, our grandmother, great-grandmother, and friend, lives on in kindness, action, and love. We hold these in our hearts. Here's to you, Janet.
We have come to share the loss we have felt in Janet's passing and some examples of the joy we carry from her life. This we have done. But before we extinguish this chalice, let us acknowledge that we will not, that we cannot extinguish the love she showed us, or the memory of her, or the love we carry forward. This congregation and many others' lives have been absorbed so much light from Janet. This congregation will continue to reflect that light into the lives of the people who enter our doors, even those who come years from now. May we always be able to see that light as it is reflected in all we do, and remember and smile, knowing her light is shining from us too.
Dearest Janet, thank you for the twinkle in your eyes. Thank you for the passion in your voice. Thank you for the no-nonsense, for setting us straight, for speaking your mind, and for knocking some sense into us. Thank you for your wit and your delicious humor. Thank you for the spring in your step, for riding that bike, for bowling those pins, for knocking that golf ball, for teaching us how to play chess. Thank you for teaching us to think and take risks. Thank you for treating us to English tea. Thank you for teaching us of courage and strength. Thank you for your fierce loyalty and patriotism. most of all, thank you for loving us. Farewell. Farewell, sweet Janet. We love you, and we will always remember you. Amen. Thank you for being with us today. We appreciate your love for Janet, your relationship with her and with us. We invite you to join us downstairs for refreshment and meet the family. The family requests that you sign the guest book, which is on the table at the rear of the sanctuary. And we want to thank all the members of UUCO who helped with this service, the music, the programs, the service itself, the food, the decorations. Come join us downstairs. Thank you.
Still I drive.